Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Farshad. This is Maya,
Hello.
and we are the Neuro Rich podcast. And this is going to be our first ever episode, episode 0, where we will describe to you guys what we will be doing for the podcast, what our plans are, and how the whole thing will move forward uh, for the foreseeable future. Okay? So, uh, before we do that, I'm just gonna get Maya to give a little bit of introduction to herself, so you guys can get to know her, and then I'll introduce myself, and then we'll talk a little bit about the podcast. All right, Maya, go for it. Tell us who you are, what you do, things like that.
So I'm Maya. I'm 18. I'm in my fourth year of my biology major. I'm hopefully going to be graduating next year, and I'm really interested in neurobiology. So that's my field of intense interest. So I'll be the most excited about most of these things.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, as I said, I'm Farshad. I am in my last year of my biology degree as well. Uh, Me and Maya basically got to know each other after a course we took. I think it was biology 234. Was it?
It was 2:30. It's the
230.
it
Yeah,
was the
the
ecology
the
course, like the one we
ecology
had to go
course.
outside. Yeah.
Yes. And I don't know how I got introduced to you, but I think it was a group chat, and essentially you said you're making this club, and that's how we got to know each other. But I'll get her to give you the details more later. But I have a very diverse studies background. I've studied uh, obviously mostly sciences with a focus on uh, environmental ecology as well as microbiology, and my other courses are quite diverse. A lot of them fall in the humanities, social sciences, and arts. Apart from that, this was originally a club that we had going for us, but we set out to do this podcast in order to uh, give our club a digital arm after the COVID pandemic has happened. Anything you want to add, Maya?
Well, yeah, because our club is basically just a before we turned it into a non-for-profit organization. The club was about spreading awareness about like the science of mental health, the science of um like topics associated with the brain and associated with how like students live their lives. So since we're really excited about like different research, we wanted to start this so that we can like talk about it, get some awareness going on, like bring to light some research that's been put forward, stuff like that.
Yeah, but I want to make this clear, and obviously, as we set out the objective of the clubs, you guys will know that the club, while it was originally about mental health awareness, things like that, our podcast is not going to be niche. Rather, we wanted to cover a wide variety of research topics, and this is essentially the goal of the podcast. We want to cover current trends in scientific research and attempt to bring about the two quite distinct and far apart worlds of academia and the general public. We want to make sure that the two can, we want to facilitate the meshing of the two. So, what do I mean by that? Well, as we've seen with the rise of conspiracy theories and nonsense, flat earther movements, and the hoax that's different hoaxes that, uh, given the day, are moving around the internet, especially in a lot of these social media messaging apps, particularly in Asia. Uh, we don't really get to know what's feeding the knowledge of the public, right? And a lot of the times it's misinformation at best and an outright craziness at worst, okay? So, what our goal is here is to spread awareness and increase public trust in the scientific process because for some reason that has fallen apart, and then help to bring the academia to the general masses. Academic research, and maybe Maya can talk more about this, is very insulated, right? Uh, and it usually doesn't yield itself to general public understanding of the matter, right? It's technical language, and what would you say the major problem with scientific research is, Maya, or in research in general?
I mean, like, I did publish a research paper, and it was like one of the main issues is just like, I mean, the publication process is pretty difficult, and also like the language. Like, if if you're not an expert on it, like it's really hard for like the general public to understand. So you need to rely on people who take the time to like put those into articles and like summarize them, like, and then like in post secondary, right? Like when you're in university, you'd have to like do these reviews yourself, to understand it. And at some point, you're gonna get to that point where you can like understand everything. But for people like the general public, there's no way to know, right? Unless someone writes an article about it. And if they misunderstand it, then what happens, right? There needs to be like it's really hard to get like there's always a barrier between like what someone in the general public can understand and what an expert can understand. And trying to explain like and trying to like form a middle ground is like incredibly difficult with the language and all that, and like how to access them, right? You can only access them through journals. Some of them don't get published to a journal, they get published to a database, like a resource, and some people just don't know where to look either, right? Unless you're in the
100%.
sciences.
A lot of them are behind paid barriers. So barrier to entry for research is ultimately quite high. And even when you are doing research yourself, or uh, are conducting research for assignment or something, what you end up noticing is that the amount of information out there is quite overwhelming. And when the information is overwhelming, it's easy to get lost, first off. And secondly, people don't have the scientific knowledge to qualify a lot of these articles. Just because it's a research article doesn't mean it's a good research article, right? A lot of the research can be faulty, even in peer-reviewed journal. A lot of it can be misleading, and then a lot of research, in citing other research, ends up citing the wrong thing, the wrong information, and to some extent, sometimes doesn't provide the right context. And what ends up happening is you have a scenario in which research in academia is happening, but it's insulated in a small bubble, and within that small bubble, nothing comes out ever. And when it does, it comes out in a problematic fashion, right? So, as two sciences students in a fairly well-established university, we have the ability and the capacity to read these articles and to present the information in them in a well accessible manner without the jargon, and we also do our own due diligence when it comes to these research articles to ensure that there are no problems with them, right? The ultimate goal essentially is that the society is broken, right? Regardless of which part of the world you look at, unless you're living in the Scandinavian nations, then, then you're pretty
Oh my
well
god.
off, right?
They're really well off.
Quite,
Like,
quite so, yeah.
I wish I could live there, man. I'm just like looking at it on the news, like they're just having the best time, and so do I.
Honestly,
I want to go have the best
honestly,
time. Why can't I just move to Norway?
it's like they're living in a different planet, and the situation is much, much, much worse in America, and we don't want to even get into that today. But especially in America, uh, there are issues within the society and the capitalist Western world as a whole that need fixing. The solutions are out there, having been presented by academics long, long time ago. And to this date, it seems as if there is no way of solving these problems. So that's the goal.